Please, mister, we're starving!
Where are your people, boy? It is not safe out here.
We haven't eaten in 3 days, mister. Just a slice, please. My brother is sick.
Yeah, very sick. Please, we're starving.
John Hale woke from a half-dream when the knocking started, sharp enough to cut through the leftovers of sleep that clung to him. He sat up at the kitchen table, breath held, wondering if he imagined it. The knock came again, faster this time, almost angry. He pushed himself to his feet, knees stiff, and reached for the lantern beside the stove. The flame caught, weak but steady, throwing a narrow slice of light across the floor. He moved to the back door and paused, hand hovering near the latch. Another knock followed, softer but urgent, like someone trying not to cry. He opened the door a crack, lantern held high. 2 boys stood on the porch. Mud covered their faces, their clothes, even their hair. The older one held the younger by the arm, keeping him upright. Both stared past the lantern as if afraid of what it might reveal. John felt his stomach twist. He had seen hungry children before, but something in their eyes made him step back without thinking. The older boy spoke first, voice cracked from cold and fear. "Sir, we need food," the boy said. "Please. Anything." The younger added, "We ain't got none. Haven't eaten in I don't know how long." John lowered the lantern. "Where are your folks?" The older shook his head. "No folks." "Where'd you come from?" "Rode south." "Who sent you here?" "No one. We just saw your light." John stood there, lantern trembling in his grip. The cold crept in from behind the boys, carrying a smell of wet earth and smoke from distant brush. The younger boy hugged himself, shivering hard enough that his teeth tapped. John cleared his throat. His voice came out rough. "You boys alone out here?" The older answered fast, almost snapping. "Yes. Alone." "For how long?" "A while." "Where you heading?" "Don't know. Just forward." The lantern light wavered between them. John felt that old ache rising again, the one that lived in the empty chair by the stove. He told himself not to look at it, but his eyes drifted anyway. He opened the door a little wider, letting more light spill out. The boys stepped back as if expecting him to turn them away. He asked, "You two eaten anything today?" The older whispered, "Nothing." John looked at their shaking arms and hollow cheeks. Something inside him gave. He stepped aside, just a little, just enough. "Come in for a minute." The boys didn't move. They looked at each other, breath fogging in the air. The younger whispered to the older, "Should we?" The older muttered back, "We ain't got nowhere else." John could hear every word. He kept his eyes on the ground, giving them room to decide. When they finally stepped forward, the porch wood creaked. John held the lantern higher, guiding them inside. The smell of stew still lingered from his late supper, and the boys' eyes tracked it immediately. Their stomachs growled loud enough to echo in the small room. He tried not to notice how thin they were. "You sit," he said quietly. The older shook his head. "We ain't staying. Just food. Then we go." John nodded. "Fine. Sit anyway." The younger muttered, "Smells real good." John answered, "It's hot enough still." He set the lantern on the counter and reached for the pot. His hands shook more than usual, enough that he steadied himself on the table. The boys watched every move like they feared it might be taken away. He ladled stew into 2 chipped bowls, set them on the table, and stepped back. The boys fell on the food fast. Too fast. John had to tell them to slow down. They didn't listen. They couldn't. Hunger had its own rules. John leaned against the counter, watching them eat. He felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest, something he didn't trust. The younger boy lifted his gaze between bites. "Thank you," he whispered. John nodded once. The lantern flickered, shrinking the shadows around them. John stepped to the door, opened it wider for fresh air, and hesitated. The boys kept eating, but their eyes drifted past him into the dark kitchen, as if expecting something else to appear from the silence he tried to ignore. He felt their fear before he understood it. The older boy stopped eating first, spoon hanging in midair, eyes fixed on something behind John's shoulder. John turned but saw only the old stove, the pot still steaming, and the empty chair he refused to touch since his wife passed. He asked, "What are you looking at?" Neither boy answered. The younger only whispered, "Thought someone was there." John felt a chill, sharp and unexpected, slip down his spine. He shut the door halfway, leaving a slit of cold night air brushing the floorboards like a warning. He tried to steady himself, but the weight in the room shifted in a way he couldn't name. The boys watched him with wide, uncertain eyes, their bowls half empty now, their hands still trembling. He said softly, "You're safe here." The older boy answered, "We don't know that." John swallowed hard. "I won't turn you out." The younger added, "People say things they don't mean." John stepped back toward them, hand resting on the table. "I mean it." The boys didn't look convinced, but they didn't stand to leave either. John held the door open just a little wider, letting the cold slip around his boots as the two boys stared past him into the dark kitchen. The lantern on the counter gave off a tired light, not strong enough to reach the far corners of the room. The older boy kept his hand on the younger's back, pushing him forward inch by inch like he expected something inside to lunge at them. John tried to sound calm as he said they could come in, but the truth was he felt the weight of their fear pressing in the room with them. He stepped aside, letting the warm air spill out onto the porch. The younger boy trembled harder, like stepping over that threshold meant giving up the last bit of control he had left. They stepped through the doorway and paused near the table. The smell of stew filled the air, thick and warm, and the older boy whispered, "Is that really for us?" John answered, "It is if you sit." They didn't sit at first. They kept their eyes on the corners where shadows hung like heavy cloth. John tried again, softer. "Boys, nobody else is here." The younger asked, "You sure?" John nodded. "Positive." The older finally guided the younger to a chair and lowered himself into the other one, but both kept glancing toward the doorway like they expected footsteps following them in. John filled 2 bowls with stew and set them on the table. The boys didn't wait for permission. They leaned in and ate fast, breath short between bites. Their spoons scraped the bowls like they were racing something that chased them through hunger and days without rest. John stood by the stove, watching, feeling something twist in his chest. He hadn't fed children in years, not since before his wife died. The room felt different with them in it, louder and quieter at the same time. He asked, "How long since you ate last?" The older boy barely lifted his head as he answered, "A while." John pressed, "How long's a while?" The younger said, "Too long." The older shot him a quick look, the kind that warned him to stop talking. John caught it. He took a step closer. "You two running from something?" The older shook his head fast. "No," John frowned. "You don't lie worth a damn." The younger snorted between bites. "Told you," he whispered to his brother. The older hissed, "Be quiet." John leaned in slightly. "You don't have to tell me everything. Just don't lie to me." The older's jaw tightened. "We ain't your problem." John replied, "Maybe not. But you're in my kitchen." The younger added, "And it's warm." John softened his tone. "Eat slow or you'll make yourself sick." They didn't slow. Their fear kept the pace. John walked to the far counter, pretending not to stare. His wife's old apron still hung there, untouched. He avoided looking at it most nights, but tonight it seemed to pull at him. The boys kept whispering between mouthfuls. He heard fragments. "He's close. We shouldn't be stopped. I'm so tired." John turned, leaning his hand on the table. "Who's close?" The older slammed his spoon down. "Nobody." The younger murmured, "He's lying." The older shot him a look sharp enough to cut. John crouched beside them. Boys, I'm not asking to pry. I'm asking because there are folks out here who hurt children and don't answer for it. The older said, we didn't come to tell stories. John answered, then don't. But if there's danger on your heels, I need to know before it reaches my door. The younger stared into his bowl. We didn't want to come here. We just got cold. The older added, we won't stay long. John nodded. Didn't say you had to. The lantern flickered behind them, giving the walls a crawling movement. The older boy kept glancing toward the hallway, like someone might step out. John finally said, I told you. Nobody else is here. The younger asked quietly, was someone here before? John froze. For a second he couldn't speak. He forced a breath. My wife. The younger asked, where is she? John answered, gone. The older murmured, sorry. John shrugged. Doesn't change the quiet in here. The boys kept eating, slower now, like the food was pulling them back into their bodies. John stood there listening to the small sounds they made. He thought of nights when he and his wife would eat at this same table, laughing at something small. The memory pushed at him. He pushed back. He asked, you boys got names? The older hesitated. I'm Caleb. The younger said, I'm Eli. John nodded. I'm John. Eli asked, you a cook? John said, I was. Still am, I guess. Haven't cooked for more than one in a while. Caleb said, stew's real good. John murmured, glad you think so. Caleb leaned back, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. We can go after we finish. John shook his head. Not in the dark. You'll freeze before dawn. Caleb said, better than getting caught. John stiffened. Caught by who? Eli whispered, him. Caleb glared. Eli. Eli whispered, sorry. John reached for an extra spoon near the stove, trying to steady his thoughts. You don't have to tell me everything. But you're safe for tonight. Caleb muttered, no place is safe. John said, sit here anyway. Eli looked up mid-bite, eyes wide and wet. Please don't send us back. John felt the please settle deep inside him tonight. John set the bowls aside and kept the door open just wide enough for the cold to slip around his boots. The boys watched the dark kitchen like it held a warning he couldn't see. Caleb pressed a hand to Eli's back, urging him forward, but both hesitated on the threshold. John stepped aside without speaking. The lantern on the counter burned low, throwing weak light over the table and the hanging pots. The boys entered slowly, shoulders tense, as if expecting someone else to be waiting in the shadows. John closed the door behind them and felt the room tighten around the three of them. The stew still sat warm on the stove. John filled 2 bowls and placed them on the table. Eli grabbed his first, eating so fast his spoon scraped loud against the wood. Caleb followed, less frantic but just as hungry. Their hands trembled with every bite. John stood by the counter watching them devour the food. He wanted to wait until they had a little comfort in them before asking anything, but the fear in their eyes made him speak sooner. He asked how long they had been on the road. Caleb muttered, too long. Eli whispered, days. John asked who they were running from. Caleb didn't answer. Eli said it was a man who worked the ranch lands outside town, a man who didn't like being told no. Caleb told him to stop talking, but Eli kept going, voice shaking as he said the man had help, real help, the kind that wore badges and didn't listen when children begged. John felt something shift behind his ribs. He asked if the sheriff knew about the man. Caleb looked away. Eli nodded, eyes wide. John pressed harder, asking what the sheriff had done. Caleb whispered, nothing. He don't cross him. John moved to the cupboard and took down his wife's heavy serving spoon. It was the one she used whenever she wanted to make the house feel warm, even on nights when the world outside didn't offer kindness. He felt the weight of it in his hand. Caleb and Eli watched him carefully, unsure if they had said too much. John set the spoon on the table with a sharp sound that made them jump. He asked again who protected the man. Caleb said the sheriff did, said the sheriff didn't argue with someone who brought him money and silence. Eli added that the man always laughed when they tried to run. John sat across from them, one hand resting near the spoon. He told them he didn't care about the sheriff's money or the man's threats. Caleb said they had heard that before. John leaned forward and said, "Not from me." Eli asked why his voice shook if he meant it. John didn't deny it. He said fear didn't matter when truth was sitting at his table. Caleb looked toward the window and said they shouldn't have come. Eli argued they would have frozen if they hadn't. Their voices overlapped, sharp and frightened, until John raised a hand and told them both to breathe. Caleb's eyes drifted to the sheriff's badge lying near the edge of the table. He asked why John kept it if he didn't trust the man who gave it back. John said it was a reminder of how power worked out here. Eli reached out and touched the badge with one finger, asking if the sheriff ever helped anyone who needed him. John said not enough. Caleb asked what happened to John's wife, but John didn't answer. He only folded his hand around the badge and set it down with the spoon like they belonged together. Eli whispered that the man they ran from said nobody would believe boys like them. John said he believed them. Eli asked if the sheriff would come. Caleb said he would go anywhere the man told him. John rubbed his forehead and said he wasn't afraid of the sheriff. Eli asked if he was afraid of the man behind him. John said yes. Caleb looked confused, asking why he would still help. John said some men had already taken too much from this house, and he wouldn't let them take more. Eli asked what he would do if someone came to the door tonight. John said he would do what he had to. Silence settled in the kitchen as the boys stared at John, trying to understand why a grown man would admit fear so plainly. John didn't meet their eyes. He stared at the sheriff's badge again, the metal catching the lantern light. He reached out and pulled it closer, setting it in the center of the table where both boys could see it. Caleb frowned and asked why he kept something tied to people he didn't trust. John said it reminded him that power didn't always mean protection. Eli touched the edge of the badge with one finger and asked if the sheriff ever helped anyone who truly needed him. John said not enough. Caleb asked what happened to John's wife, but John didn't answer. He closed his hand over the badge and told them they weren't going back to the man who hurt them. Eli asked what he would do if the sheriff came looking. John said he would do what he had to. Caleb whispered that the sheriff would be angry. John said anger wasn't new in this house. Before they could speak again, a sudden pounding hit the back door, now louder and heavier than the boys' knock had ever been. The man in the hat, the cook, heard the horse long before the knock. Hooves dragging through dry dirt, a slow rhythm that made his spine tighten. He stood at the sink, staring at the empty bowls the boys had left behind after crawling into the pantry. Their breathing was quiet but fast, a trembling rise and fall behind the curtain. The back door creaked as the man stepped onto the porch. The cook kept his eyes on the window. He could see the outline of a hat, wide and stiff, the kind worn by someone who believed his presence settled arguments before they started. The knock came like a low command. The cook wiped his hands on his shirt. He opened the door with a calm he did not feel. The deputy stood there, narrow eyes scanning the room behind him before he even spoke. "Evening. Evening. Got some concerns in these parts?" "Most folks do," the cook said. "This one's particular," the deputy replied. "You taken any visitors tonight?" The cook shook his head. "Not a one." "Funny. Tracks say otherwise." The cook held the door wider, inviting the deputy to see nothing but a quiet kitchen. "Tracks lie sometimes." The deputy stepped inside without asking. His boots scraped across the floor, each step slow and deliberate. "Smells like stew," he said. "Cold by now. Mind if I look around?" "You're already doing it," the cook said. The deputy's gaze touched every surface. The stove. The table. The bowls. The cook saw his eyes pause on the serving spoon, the old one his wife had held during long evenings when the wind rattled the windows and the world outside felt far away. The deputy walked toward the pantry door. The cook's heart punched against his ribs. "Something interesting back there?" the deputy asked. "Just flour and jars. Mind if I check?" "I do," the cook said, quieter than he intended. The deputy turned. "Problem? My pantry's my business. Everything's the sheriff's business when he says it is." The cook saw the boy's shadows shift behind the curtain, small shapes moving like trapped birds. "I'm not hiding anything," the cook said. "Then this'll be quick." The deputy reached for the curtain. The cook stepped between them before thinking. "You hungry?" he asked. The deputy blinked. "What?" "I said, are you hungry? You rode out here. Long road. Dust everywhere. You look worn." "I didn't come for food." "Still. You look like you could use it. Move aside." "Sit," the cook said. "Have a bowl." The deputy's jaw tightened. "You stalling?" "Offering." Silence filled the room, thick and slow. The deputy finally stepped back, but not far. "You hear anything about two boys running loose?" The cook kept his face still. "No, sheriff's real interested in them." "Why?" "Not my place to question." "Then what is your place?" the cook asked. "Finding them." "And doing what?" "Returning them." "To who?" "Again." "Not my place." The pantry curtain fluttered the slightest bit. The deputy turned his head at the sound. "Thought you said you were alone." "I am." Something moved. "House shifts in the cold." "It's not cold." "Depends who you ask." The deputy studied him, eyes narrowing like blades. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm old," the cook replied. "Old bones rattle." The deputy stepped closer. "You lying to me?" "No, your voice says otherwise." "My voice is tired." "Show me the pantry," the deputy said. "No," the cook answered. "You don't get to say no." "I just did." For a moment, neither spoke. The air felt tightened, stretched thin. The deputy placed a hand on his holster. "Move." The cook didn't move. "Last chance," the deputy said. "You threatening me?" "I'm doing my job." "Your job doesn't make sense." "Doesn't have to. Those boys aren't criminals." The deputy's face shifted, a crack of intention showing. "You seen them?" It wasn't a question. The cook felt something settle inside him, a weight he had carried for years but never used. "No," he said again, steady this time. "But I won't help you hurt anyone." The deputy stared, long enough that the curtain behind them went still again. "I'll be back," he said. "With more questions." "Bring an appetite," the cook replied. The deputy walked to the door. Before stepping out, he turned. "Sheriff says anyone hiding them will pay." "Sheriff says many things," the cook said. "Not all worth hearing." The deputy stepped onto the porch. The cook followed him far enough to look out. The horse pawed the ground and snorted. The deputy mounted, eyes never leaving the cook's face. "Storm's coming," he said. "Not weather." "I'll be ready," the cook replied. The deputy nodded once and tugged the reins. The horse turned, kicking up a trail of dust that drifted across the yard in a long pale line. The cook stood there, watching it fade, feeling the weight of the choice he had made settle deep into his chest. Inside, the house felt too still. The boys stayed behind the curtain, hardly breathing. The cook shut the door and held the knob, steadying himself. He told them the danger had passed for now, though he knew better than to trust the quiet. When he stepped onto the porch again, he kept staring at the trail of dust his horse left behind in the fading light. The moment the cook stepped off the porch, the night pressed close around him, heavier than it should have been. He kept his eyes on the old well behind the house, the one his wife once tended with quiet hands. Its stones caught a faint line of moonlight. The boys stayed close behind him, their footsteps quick and nervous as they followed him across the yard. The cook felt their fear mixing with the ache already sitting beneath his ribs. He stopped near the well and stared into the circle of shadow. The sound of shifting water rose from below, stirring memories he tried not to touch. He used to stand here with his wife, leaning shoulder to shoulder. Now the place felt like a reminder he couldn't escape. The boys breathed fast behind him, pulling him out of the past. "Why is it so dark?" the younger boy asked. "It was always dark," the cook said. "Looks worse," the older whispered. "It only looks worse when you're scared," the cook answered, though he didn't know if he was telling the truth. The boys stepped closer. The younger held the back of his shirt. The older kept glancing at the house, then the trees, then the well. "You two ever seen a well before?" the cook asked. "No," the younger said. "Yes," the older said. "You sure?" the cook asked. The older swallowed. "Ours dried up. He said it was our fault." "Your fault?" the cook asked. "Said we didn't work hard enough." "Your kids," the cook said. "Kids ain't supposed to hold up a house." The older boy lifted his chin. "He said someone had to." The younger whispered, "Mama tried." The cook felt those words land deep. He remembered his wife saying almost the same thing when she grew weak. He pushed the memory aside before it rose too sharp. "What happened to your mama?" he asked. The older hesitated. "She got hurt." "Hurt how?" The younger blurted, "He hurt her." The cook felt the air around them tighten. "You sure?" "Yes," the older said. "He came home angry. Sheriff told him something. Then he broke things. Broke her first. She tried to run," the younger said. "And you ran after?" the cook asked. "We had to," the older replied. The cook turned back toward the well. His wife used to say the water held truth if anyone listened. He wished he could hear her now. "You boys aren't safe going back," the cook said. "We know," the older said. "You cold?" the younger asked. "A little," he admitted. The cook breathed out. "Come closer to the house then." But they stayed where they were, watching him like he held their future. He didn't like that feeling. He wasn't a hero. Just a man cooking meals in a quiet house filled with unfinished memories. "You missing her?" the younger boy asked. The cook froze. "What makes you say that?" "You look like someone who's missing someone." The older elbowed him, but the cook shook his head. "It's all right." "He's right." "What happened to her?" the older asked. "She got sick," the cook said. "Didn't get better." They fell silent. Wind brushed across the yard. "You loved her," the younger said. "Yes," the cook said. "Still do." The older nodded. "Our mama loved us. Even when things were bad." "I believe that," the cook said. He stepped forward, putting himself between them and the well. He didn't want them staring into that darkness. "You scared to go back inside?" he asked. "Yes," they said. "Why?" "It's quiet," the younger whispered. "Quiet isn't dangerous," the cook said. The older shook his head. "Quiet means someone's coming." The cook felt that line sink into him. He knelt so they could see his face. "You're safe here," he said. "You sure?" the older asked. "I'm sure." The younger stepped closer. "What if he finds us?" "He won't." The cook felt the night tighten around them as he stood still. But the words felt thin. A crow screeched overhead, loud and sharp. The older boy flinched and whispered, "He'll kill us if he finds us." The cook stood there a moment, steadying his breath. He looked back at the house, its windows dim and waiting. The boys watched him, quiet and tense. "You two been running long?" he asked. "A while," the older said. "How long's a while?" "Since she fell," the older replied. Since he blamed us. The cook nodded. He blame you often? Always, the younger whispered. That kind of man don't know family, the cook said. The older stepped closer. Then why is he in charge? Because nobody stood up to him, the cook said. The younger tugged his sleeve. You gonna stand up to him? The cook looked toward the well, remembering his wife's soft voice. She'd tell him to do what was right. He wished he could hear her now. I don't know what I can do, he said. But I won't hand you over. The older stared at him. He won't stop looking. Then he'll keep looking, the cook said. But he won't find you here. The younger's voice shook. You promise? I promise, the cook said. The wind moved through the yard. The cook turned toward the house. Come on, he said. Night's getting colder. The boys followed him without a word, staying close to his steps. The door shut behind them with a soft click, and the cook felt the warmth of the kitchen wrap around the three of them again. The boys hovered close, still shaken from the yard, and the youngest clung to the edge of the table like it was the only solid thing left in his world. The cook moved toward the stove, trying to steady himself with simple motions. He lit another lantern, but the flame trembled like it wanted to escape the room. The boys watched him, silent at first, their eyes wide and unsure. The youngest whispered, Is it okay if I sit? The cook nodded and pulled out a chair. The boy climbed onto it, legs dangling, hands pressed together like he was waiting for permission to breathe. The older boy stayed standing, leaning against the wall near the pantry curtain. His eyes never stopped tracking the room. The cook noticed the tension in his shoulders and spoke softly. You're all right, he said. Both of you. The younger boy nodded, then looked down, then up again. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something and swallow it at the same time. The cook waited, not pushing. Finally the boy whispered, Papa? The word hung there, soft but sharp enough to divide the air. The cook felt it hit him in a place he didn't know was still open. The older boy's head snapped toward his brother, eyes wide, like he'd heard something dangerous. I'm sorry, the younger said quickly. I didn't mean it. I didn't. I know you're not him. I know. The cook knelt beside him. You didn't do anything wrong. The younger boy shook his head. I shouldn't have said it. It's all right, the cook said, even though his chest felt tight. Why'd you call me that? The younger swallowed. It just came out. The older boy stepped forward. He didn't mean nothing by it, he said quickly, voice sharp with nerves. He gets mixed up. With things. Things like what? The cook asked. The older boy looked away. Things from before. The cook felt the weight of that settle in the room. He looked at the younger boy, whose hands were trembling against the edge of the table. The cook reached out, slow enough not to scare him, and rested a hand on his shoulder. You miss your papa? He asked. The boy held his breath, then whispered, I miss someone who wasn't mean. The cook closed his eyes. He felt his wife's presence in that silence, the way she used to place her hand on his back when he struggled to speak. He wished she were standing beside him now, because she'd know what to say. You don't have to be scared of me, the cook said. The younger wiped his eyes. I just want a place to sit without someone yelling. You got that here, the cook said. The older boy watched them, face tight, like he didn't trust good things. The cook understood that feeling. He picked himself up slowly and faced the older brother. You too, he said. You're safe. The older boy shrugged stiffly. We'll see. The cook turned back to the stove and poured water into a pot, just to have something to do with his hands. The boys sat close to the table, watching him like he might disappear if they blinked. The younger spoke again, quiet as steam. Can we stay here? The cook kept his back to them. Tonight you can. What about tomorrow? The older asked. The cook hesitated, staring at the pot. The water inside quivered, reflecting the trembling of the lantern light. He felt the boys waiting behind him. He turned. We'll figure tomorrow out. The younger boy gave a small smile, the kind that came from pure relief. The older watched him, still unsure, but a little of the tension slipped from his shoulders. You're safe here, the cook said. The word settled over the room like a blanket the boys were afraid to touch. The younger leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes shining with something close to trust. The older stayed rigid but no longer looked like he was preparing to run. The cook stood still, afraid any movement might break the fragile peace forming between them. He watched them watching him, and for the first time in years he felt the shape of a home beginning to form again, faint but real. He stepped toward the lantern, meaning only to steady the flame, but the light pulsed as if reacting to his touch. The boys stiffened. The cook reached out, palm open, and the lantern flickered once, twice, then guttered as though someone had blown across it. Darkness swept one side of the kitchen, leaving them in uneven shadow. The younger gasped and grabbed the cook's sleeve. The older stepped closer without meaning to, eyes darting to the dark corner as if expecting someone to step out of it. The cook steadied his breathing, though his heart beat hard against his ribs. It had been a long time since he let anyone in this house, and the walls seemed to remember it. The boys waited for his reaction. He placed a hand on the table, grounding himself, then looked at them with quiet certainty. You're safe here, he said again, even as the dark pressed closer now. The cook moved through the dim kitchen, searching for another lantern before the shadows swallowed the room completely. The boys followed behind him like small echoes, staying close but not too close, watching him with wide eyes that kept flicking toward the dark corners. The cook opened a drawer, found nothing but old matches, then knelt near the cupboards where his wife used to keep extra wicks. Dust coated everything. His fingers hesitated before tugging at a loose board near the hearth. He remembered meaning to fix it years ago, before grief took all the strength out of his hands. The board lifted with a soft groan, and something pale rested beneath it. The cook reached in and pulled out a folded envelope wrapped with a thin strip of cloth, worn smooth from age. His heart stumbled in his chest. The boys stepped closer. The older asked, "What's that?" The cook didn't answer. His thumb brushed the edge of the paper, recognizing the small marks his wife always pressed into her letters. He swallowed hard and whispered, "I didn't know she left anything." The younger boy poked his head around his brother. "Is it from your lady?" The cook nodded once, slow and uncertain, like admitting it hurt. He opened the envelope with careful hands. The paper crackled faintly. Her handwriting stared back at him, slanted and soft, and the first line pulled the breath right out of his body. The boys watched him freeze mid-read. The older boy asked, "What's wrong?" but the cook shook his head, unable to speak for a moment. He scanned the lines again, trying to understand. The letter wasn't tender or sweet like he expected. It wasn't even a farewell. It was a warning. She'd written about a visit from the sheriff, how he'd stopped by while the cook worked in town, how he'd stood too close to her and asked questions she didn't know how to answer. She wrote about suspicion spreading through the office, whispers about the cook's past involvement with men who had made trouble for the sheriff's kin. She wrote that someone in the office wanted him quiet. The cook's hands trembled. He whispered, "Why didn't she tell me?" The older boy leaned forward. "Tell you what?" The cook kept reading. His wife had described a deputy coming at dusk, telling her to keep the house empty on certain nights. She'd been frightened. She told him in the letter because she hadn't wanted to burden him then. She planned to explain everything when she felt stronger. The letter ended abruptly, the last words shaky, saying someone had come back asking more questions and she feared she'd said the wrong thing. The cook's breath shook. He closed the letter, pressing it to his chest. The younger boy whispered, "She was scared." The cook nodded. "Yes." The older boy asked, "Sheriff did something?" The cook didn't answer right away. He stared at the hearth, remembering that night too clearly now, remembering the way his wife had looked pale even before she fell sick, remembering she tried to speak but never finished the words. He whispered, "She didn't trust him. Or his men." The boys exchanged a look filled with quick, sharp fear. The younger asked, the same sheriff that works with him? He didn't have to say the man's name. The older boy clenched his fists. If he's tied to that man, we got trouble. The cook finally looked them both in the eye. My wife didn't lie. If she said something was wrong, then something was wrong. The older boy paced, voice low and frantic. If the sheriff's people were already pushing on your wife, then they're gonna push on you. They're already pushing on us. The cook set the letter on the table, smoothing it flat with trembling fingers. The boys hovered beside him, reading fragments upside down. The younger pointed to one line. She wrote, "Don't open the door at night." The older stiffened. Why'd she write that? What was coming around here at night? The cook closed the letter before the boy could read more. She worried too much, he said, but the words came out hollow. The boys heard the lie. The older boy stepped closer. Sheriff's men are looking for us. If they're tied to what happened to your wife, he didn't finish. The thought was too big to say. The younger whispered, "We shouldn't stay here." The cook gripped the table edge. "This is my home. I'm not running." The older replied, "Maybe you should." The cook snapped back, "And go where?" The younger answered quietly, "Anywhere he isn't." The cook felt anger rising in him, anger at the sheriff, at himself, at the years he spent grieving without knowing the whole truth. His wife had been afraid. Afraid enough to hide a letter in the floorboards. Afraid enough to warn him without ever saying the words aloud. He whispered, "She knew something." The boys waited. He breathed out slowly. "She knew someone was watching this house." The younger grabbed his brother's hand. The older asked, "You think that's who's after us?" The cook didn't respond. He stared at the envelope like it held the last piece of his life he still understood. The room felt too quiet now. The letter lay between them like a spark waiting for air. The boys edged closer to the cook, as if the truth itself might reach out and grab them. The older asked, "What do we do?" The cook folded the letter and slipped it into his pocket. "We keep our eyes open." The younger whispered, "And the door closed?" The cook nodded. "Especially the door." The lantern flickered again. The older boy stepped back. "It's doing that on its own." The cook didn't look away from the window. Something felt wrong outside, as if the night itself had leaned closer to listen. Then they heard it. Hoofbeats. Not one horse. Several. Coming fast. The cook heard the hoofbeats before he saw the riders. The sound rolled across the yard like a warning from the past, pushing him toward the door even before the boys realized what was happening. The older boy stepped up beside him and whispered, "It's them." The younger clung to his sleeve and asked, "What do they want now?" The cook answered, "You know what they want." He opened the door with a slow, steady motion and stepped onto the porch as the horses came to a sharp halt in front of the house. 4 deputies stared at him from their saddles. Their coats were dusty, their faces cold, and each man carried a rifle across his lap like a message that didn't need words. The lead deputy leaned forward and said, "Evening." The cook replied, "Not for me." The deputy nodded toward the door. "We're here for the boys." The cook shook his head. "They're not going anywhere with you." The second deputy spit into the dirt. "You don't get a say." The cook answered, "I do tonight." Inside, the boys crouched near the window, watching through the glass. The older boy whispered, "He's outnumbered." The younger asked, "Can we help?" The older boy shook his head. "We stay quiet." The cook kept his hands at his sides. The lead deputy said, "We got orders from the sheriff. Those kids belong to him." The cook asked, "Since when does the sheriff claim children?" The man answered, "Since their daddy caused trouble." The cook narrowed his eyes. "You mean since he refused to bow?" The deputy lowered his voice. "Don't make this harder." The cook stepped off the porch and moved closer to the riders. "My wife wrote things about the sheriff," he said softly. "Things you might know about." The deputies stiffened. The third deputy muttered, "This again." The cook continued, she said someone came here at night. Someone asking questions that weren't theirs to ask. The lead deputy replied, your wife talked too much. The cook's jaw tightened. She talked because she was scared. The second deputy raised his rifle slightly. Careful now. The cook didn't flinch. You didn't help her then. You won't touch these boys now. Inside the house, the older boy's attention drifted toward the table. Something caught the lantern light. He moved closer and saw the old sheriff's badge lying beside a stack of tools. It wasn't whole. A crack ran through its center. He whispered, it's broken. The younger boy hurried over. What does that mean? The older boy answered, it means he's not as strong as he wants people to think. He picked up the badge and turned it over in his hand. Someone snapped this. The younger asked, do you think it was his wife? The older boy replied, maybe. Or the cook. Outside, the cook squared his shoulders. The lead deputy said, your wife was sick. Everyone knows that. The cook answered, she wasn't sick before you all showed up. The third deputy snapped, that's enough. But the cook stepped even closer. She hid a letter under the floorboards. She feared you. She feared the sheriff. She feared what you were doing in his name. The second deputy glared. You don't know anything. The cook replied, I know she died trying to protect me. The lead deputy's horse shifted. We're done talking. Bring us the boys. The cook said, no, the man leaned forward. We can drag them out. The cook answered, you could try. Tension tightened the air. The deputies shifted their rifles. The cook didn't move. Inside, the older boy whispered, they'll force their way in. The younger asked, what do we do? The older boy held the cracked badge. We trust him. The younger boy looked toward the door. He's scared. The older boy nodded. Yeah. But he's still standing. The lead deputy called out, last chance. Step aside. The cook didn't blink. You didn't give my wife a last chance, he said. You won't get one either. The second deputy barked, you threatening lawman? The cook replied, I'm standing in my doorway. The lead deputy growled, not for long. The house seemed to hold its breath. The boys pressed closer to the window. The younger boy whispered, they're going to shoot. The older boy whispered back, not first. They want us alive. The cook kept his gaze locked on the lead deputy. Tell the sheriff, he said, that I'm done hiding from him. The deputy raised his hand. Men. Ready. The younger boy clutched his brother's arm. He's going to get hurt. The older boy answered, he knows. The cook stepped back onto the porch, gripping the doorframe with one hand as if grounding himself in the only thing left that was his. Then the lead deputy shouted, last chance. The sound cracked across the yard like a whip, freezing everything in place. The cook tightened his grip on the doorframe, feeling the wood bite into his palm as he steadied himself against the panic in his chest. The deputies watched him with hard eyes, waiting for the smallest tremor of fear. Inside, the boys pressed close together, listening to the silence that followed the shout. The cook drew a breath, shoulders set, refusing to move as dust drifted in the light. He knew this moment would change everything now. The lantern fell before anyone realized it had tipped. One breath it was steady on the hook, the next it was rolling across the wooden counter, oil spilling like a dark ribbon, flame reaching out as if eager for trouble. The boys froze. The cook spun toward it, too far away to catch it. The lantern burst against the floor and the fire leapt up the cabinets with a greedy, living hiss. The older boy shouted, move. The younger boy coughed, eyes watering already as smoke curled fast through the low kitchen beams. The cook grabbed them by the collars, dragging them back from the spreading flame. Outside, boots scraped gravel. Someone yelled, surround the door. Another voice barked, no one gets out. The boys' faces went pale. The younger one whispered, they're going to shoot us. The cook said, Not if we're gone first. The fire surged up the curtains and split the room in two. Heat pressed against them like a hand trying to shove them toward the front door. The cook pulled the boys behind the prep table, coughing into his sleeve. "Window," he said. "Now." The older boy peered through the smoke. "They're right outside it." The cook said, "Better them than the flames." The younger boy tugged on his shirt. "We'll get shot." The cook crouched to meet his eyes. "Not if I go first." A beam cracked overhead. Embers fell around them like sparks from a forge. The older boy grabbed the younger's wrist. "Come on." Outside, someone shouted, "Flames!" "Back up." Another voice said, "They'll run out the back." The cook muttered, "Good. Let them think that." He shoved the boys toward the small window above the sink. Heat clawed at their backs as the fire devoured the shelves. "Open it," he said. The older boy fumbled with the latch. His hand slipped. The younger boy tried to help, coughing hard, eyes streaming. The cook slammed his shoulder into the frame. It cracked open an inch. Push. They shoved together. The window squealed upward. Cool air rushed in, sharp and smoky. Outside, a deputy yelled, "I heard something inside." Another called, "Aim high." The older boy looked back at the cook. "You said you'd go first." The cook shook his head. "Change of plan. You go before they see you." The younger boy whimpered, "But, go." The cook lifted him by the waist and forced him through the window. The boy tumbled onto the dirt outside with a soft grunt. Gunmetal clicked nearby. "Who's there?" The older boy crawled halfway through when a burning shelf collapsed behind them. The cook shoved him the rest of the way. "Run," he whispered. The older boy grabbed the younger's arm and pulled him toward the shadows. The cook climbed out next, landing silent as he could. He ducked low and hissed, "This way." The boys followed him along the side of the house, staying close to the warped boards. Smoke poured out the broken window behind them. From the front yard someone yelled, "Fire's spreading." Another voice snarled, "Then flush them out." The cook guided the boys toward the old well behind the house. The grass was dry and crackled under their feet. The younger boy whispered, "They'll see us." The cook said, "Not once we're behind the stones." A gunshot cracked. Dirt jumped near their boots. The boys threw themselves down. The cook grabbed them by the shoulders. "Keep moving." They scrambled the last few yards to the well. The cook shoved them behind the crumbling wall, pressing them flat against the cold stone. Another shot rang out, then another. The younger boy trembled, pressing his face into the cook's sleeve. The older boy whispered, "Why are they shooting?" The cook said, "Because they're scared." "Of us?" the younger boy asked. "Of what you know," the cook said. The fire roared louder, throwing sparks into the night air. The younger boy clung to the cook's sleeve and whispered, "Will they burn?" The cook shook his head. "They'll get out. They're not trapped like we were." The older boy said, "You chose us over them." The cook kept his eyes on the house. "I chose what was right." The younger boy asked, "Are we still safe?" The cook said, "For the moment." He felt the stone at his back, cool and steady, holding him up when his knees threatened to give. The older boy asked, "Why would the lantern fall?" The cook didn't answer. He remembered the cold flicker from earlier, the way the flame dimmed without reason. The younger boy whispered, "Maybe she did it." The cook stiffened. "Who?" The younger boy said, "Your wife. You talked to her like she was still here." The cook swallowed hard. "She wouldn't hurt you." The older boy said, "Then maybe she helped." Another gunshot cracked through the yard. The younger boy pressed his hands over his ears. The cook pulled both boys closer until they were tucked tight beneath his arms. He felt their shaking and knew his matched it. The older boy whispered, "They're spreading out." The cook peeked around the well and saw deputies fanning through the smoke, shouting orders. One said, "They must still be inside." Another yelled, "Watch the windows." The cook murmured, "They don't know we're out." The older boy asked, "What now?" The cook said, "We wait for the smoke to blind them." The younger boy coughed and leaned into him. "It hurts to breathe." The cook pressed the boy's head to his chest. "I know." The older boy said, "You saved us." The cook stared at the burning kitchen, the flames twisting like memory. "I wasn't going to let them take you." The younger boy asked, "Not even if they hurt you first?" The cook said, "Not even then." The older boy said, "They'll come around the back." The cook nodded slowly. "I hear them." Voices drifted closer. "Check the shed." "Clear the coop." "Look by the trees." The cook whispered, "Stay low." The boys crouched deeper. The heat from the burning house washed over them, mixing with the cold from the stone. The younger boy whispered, "Why do they want us?" The cook closed his eyes. "Because they think no one will stand in their way." The older boy said, "You did." The cook looked at him. "I'll keep doing it." Gunshots cracked again as he dragged them deeper behind the well wall. The cook kept the boys close behind the well wall as smoke drifted across the yard from the burning kitchen. The younger boy whispered if the men were still out there. The cook said yes. The older boy asked why they were being hunted. The cook said the answer came from a night long ago, when his wife walked to this same well and never returned. He said he recognized the voice of the man shouting orders earlier. That voice had followed him for years, gnawing at him whenever the wind moved through the yard. The younger boy asked if the cook had ever told anyone. The cook said no one had listened back then, not even the deputies who dismissed him with tired eyes. A gunshot cracked the stone above them. The cook pressed the boys lower. The younger boy asked if they were going to die. The cook said not if he had anything left to give. The older boy asked if the cook had ever been this scared. The cook said fear came and went, but tonight it stayed close like an unwelcome guest. Footsteps circled the field. The cook pointed toward the dark stretch of land and told the boys they would run when he said run. The younger boy said he trusted him. The cook whispered that trust was heavier than any weapon he carried. A voice called out, demanding the boys. The cook shouted back that the men had taken enough from him already. The voice laughed and said some things could be buried deeper. The older boy whispered that the man sounded proud of what he'd done. The cook said some men buried their shame by pretending it never existed. He whispered now and pushed the boys toward the field. They sprinted as a shot hit the dirt behind them. The cook stayed close, urging them not to look back. Smoke rolled across the ground, giving them thin cover. The younger boy coughed and asked how much farther. The cook told him to keep moving until his legs refused to listen. They reached the rise near the old shed. The cook told them to crouch. The older boy asked if they should keep running. The cook said no. He said the chase needed to end here. The younger boy asked if this was where the cook last saw his wife. The cook nodded. He said the well had held too many unanswered questions. Tonight he would close them. He grabbed an old shovel by the shed. The boys watched him with widened eyes. The older boy said he didn't want the cook to stand alone. The cook said staying back was the only way to help. The footsteps returned. The cook stepped out and called to the men. The leader emerged, gun raised. He asked where the boys were. The cook said safe. The man laughed and said the cook had always been weak. The cook said weakness was hurting those who trusted you. The man lifted his gun and asked about the cook's wife. The cook said her memory was stronger than the man's cruelty. The man said memories meant nothing. The cook said they meant everything. He signaled the boys. They kicked a rusted lantern across the dirt, its clang breaking the stillness. The man flinched. The cook rushed him with the shovel. The gun fired once into the ground. The shovel struck the man's shoulder, knocking him off balance. Another swing sent him to the dirt beside the well. The other men hesitated at the edge of the field. The cook stood over the fallen man, breathing hard. The boys inched closer. The older boy asked if it was done. The cook said not yet. He pushed dirt over the man's weapon, then over the man's hands as the man cursed him. The cook said the land remembered everything, even the things men tried to bury. The man tried to rise. The cook shoveled a final mound of dirt to hold him down. The man went still. The boys looked at the cook in silence. The younger boy asked what happened now. The cook said they should go home. The older boy asked if home still stood. The cook said home was whoever walked back to it alive. They crossed the field as dawn lifted a thin light over the land. The younger boy asked if the cook felt lighter. The cook said maybe. The older boy asked if his wife would be proud. The cook said she would be proud he chose to protect instead of yield. The younger boy said he wished he had met her. The cook said she would have liked him. They neared the porch. The cook looked back at the well and everything buried beside it. He told the boys the past was finally quiet. The younger boy asked if that meant they were safe. The cook said safe enough to start again. They stepped onto the porch together, the first morning of something new settling around them with gentle air. The older boy asked what they would do first. The cook said they would fix what could be fixed and leave the rest to time. The younger boy said that sounded like hope. The cook nodded and told them hope was enough to guide steps.